They never yelled at me. That would have been easier to fight back against. No, my family preferred silence. The kind that stripped you bare, one laugh at a time, until you started believing you really were invisible. My uncle was the loudest in that silence. Every smirk, every dismissive glance at the table, said more than words ever could. You don't belong here, Yara. And I believed him, for a long time. I smiled through the jokes, swallowed the humiliation, told myself that being quiet meant being strong. But it wasn't strength. It was surrender, and I didn't even notice when it became my habit. That night, when he laughed at me in front of everyone, something cracked, quietly, but clean. I remember looking at him and thinking, "You've mistaken my silence for permission." It wasn't. And the world he built on that mistake is about to find out. The rain in Seattle didn't fall. It hovered. It hung in the air like static, brushing against my coat as I stepped out of the glass tower of the Space and Defense Analytics building. The street glimmered under neon reflections. Every puddle looked like a small piece of the night sky. I stopped at the corner coffee stand, poured black coffee into a travel mug, and watched the steam drift up like thin, gray smoke. At my desk, the hum of servers filled the silence. I opened my laptop, checking the Phoenix satellite's orbit. Every blip on the screen moved in perfect rhythm, a choreography only I could read. My hand hovered over the keyboard. Each pulse meant something was alive, somewhere above the clouds. I thought to myself, everyone has their own piece of sky. Mine just happens to speak in numbers. A new email blinked from Roy Whitestone, CEO, Sky Legacy Aviation. The subject line read simply, Colorado Springs, wedding, fly with me. His voice played in my memory, the same mocking tone he always used when we shared oxygen. You work in aerospace, yet you still fly coach? I almost deleted it. My finger rested on the key. Then I stopped. On my desk sat a framed photo, uniforms, sunlight, and younger faces from another life. I traced the edge of the frame. I'd left that world years ago, but pieces of it still pulsed under my skin. These days, my mission involved watching the sky for irregular movement, monitoring frequencies that shouldn't exist. And lately, one of those frequencies had been whispering the same name, Sky Legacy. I turned toward the window. The city blurred behind raindrops, the gray horizon folding into itself. I typed a short reply. Thank you, I'll be there. Then I whispered what I knew he'd never understand. If he thought this trip would make me smaller, he was wrong. I already tracked the very sky he bragged about owning. Outside, the Phoenix satellite cut across the dark clouds, a single glint of silver against the rain. A storm was coming, but I was ready for it. Roy's house in Bellevue looked exactly as I remembered. Too big, too polished, a monument to his own taste. The smell of grilled steak clung to the air, and jazz hummed softly from invisible speakers. Crystal glasses caught the light like they wanted attention. I sat at the far end of the long walnut table, surrounded by people who spoke as if money made them fluent in everything. Their glances flicked toward me, some curious, some pitying, most politely indifferent. Roy lifted his glass, his grin rehearsed. My niece will be joining us on the flight to Colorado Springs, he announced, voice booming with performative warmth. Consider it a chance for her to see what real success looks like. Laughter rolled down the table, smooth and obedient. I pressed my fingers against the stem of my glass, grounding myself in the hum of the air conditioning. He started boasting about his private fleet, how his jets flew without the nuisance of civilian control, how he'd found shortcuts through FAA restrictions. My stomach turned. I slipped my phone under the table and checked the satellite log through a secure app. A red ping blinked. Unauthorized access detected. The IP source, Sky Legacy's own network. Excusing myself, I walked to the marble bathroom, closed the door, and whispered into my earpiece. Anomaly detected. Possible interference from a civilian node. Request trace confirmation. Static. Then a voice. We can't act without proof. Confirm on site. When I returned, Roy was cutting into his steak, smirking. You weren't recording the grown-ups, were you? I met his eyes. I don't need to. I remember everything. His laugh was sharp, slicing through the jazz. The sound of glasses clinking followed, like a ritual before war. Later, I stood by the window, watching my reflection split by the golden glow of the chandelier and the dark pane beyond it. One half belonged to his world, the other, to mine. And for the first time, I realized how far apart those worlds were about to drift. Seattle's sunrise looked sterile from the Sky Legacy hangar. Metal corridors, chrome floors, employees in matching black uniforms, and the faint tang of jet fuel in the air. I walked through the terminal with my black backpack slung over one shoulder, laptop and encrypted drives tucked inside. Roy eyed the bag as if it offended him. You planning to hack my jet, kiddo? I smiled faintly. I just like fastening my own seatbelt. His laugh echoed down the hangar, but I noticed the pilot's uneasy glance. While the ground crew loaded luggage, I powered up a handheld frequency scanner. A spike flashed across the screen. Flight code 9981B. My pulse quickened. That code belonged to a military UAV, currently active near Denver. I approached the pilot quietly. Are you sure this registration is cleared? He shifted his weight, eyes darting toward Roy's office window. Orders from the boss, ma'am. He wants to skip registration, less paperwork, no landing fees. I nodded slowly, the weight of it settling in my chest. A shortcut for him could become a crisis for everyone else. When the engines roared to life, I took the window seat near the back. Clouds swirled beyond the glass, gray, layered, heavy. Roy lifted a glass of whiskey and told his investors how he owned the air itself. No one controls my skies, he said. I kept my eyes on the horizon. The sky always has a guardian, I said quietly. They just don't feel the need to brag about it. The plane climbed into the dense clouds, sunlight slicing through the mist. Its reflection glimmered against the glass, sharp, silent, unblinking, somewhere between the roar of the engines and the echo of his laughter. I could already feel the storm building. The jet cabin pulsed with quiet arrogance. I sat buckled in the back, hands steady on my laptop, while Roy's laughter filled the air. He raised his glass, whiskey glinting like gold. Relax, he said. Stop thinking like a technician and enjoy the view. The pilot announced takeoff. The engines roared, pressing us into our seats. I opened the Phoenix interface, switched to civilian movement track, and watched the pattern of signals shimmer across the map. Every object in the sky left a trace, even those that believed they were invisible. A red flash appeared. Vermilion alert. Unknown craft mirrored to UAV 9981B. My chest tightened. That transponder's military. Did you file a plan? I asked the pilot. The boss said ghost mode. No registration, no fees. You just made us a target, Roy chuckled. Target for what? This isn't a movie. If I'm wrong, nothing happens. If I'm right, something shows up outside in 7 minutes. He frowned. I entered the override code. Valkyrie, Athena 324C. Are you sure to transmit to NORAD command? Blinked on screen. I hit enter. Roy leaned forward. What did you do? I stopped them from shooting us down. 6 minutes. The cabin grew colder. One investor whispered, What if they don't recognize you? Then we'll make tomorrow's headlines. I don't joke about radar. A siren cut through the air. Lock-on signal detected. The pilot's face drained of color. Roy jumped up, shouting about his friends in Washington. The secretary doesn't fly F-22s, I said quietly. Outside, the clouds split apart. A flash of silver streaked by the window, followed by the roar of engines tearing the sky open. I looked up. They were here. The radio hissed. Then a sharp voice thundered through static. Unidentified civilian Gulfstream. This is Raptor lead. Identify immediately, or prepare to be escorted. The pilot's hand shook. What now? This is Valkyrie Control. Asset confirmed on board, I said. Silence. Even the engines seemed to hold their breath. Roy's voice cracked. What did they call you? I looked out the window. Two raptors glided beside us, wings gleaming like knives. They called me by what I really am. The radio barked again. Valkyrie, confirm route to Peterson Air Base. Confirm. Manual override requested. Roy lunged for the mic. I'll talk to them. I stopped him. You can, but they'll only listen to the one they trust. Who's that supposed to be? Not you. Outside, the Raptors split formation and dropped ahead of us. The pilot shouted, They're forcing descent! Roy snarled. I own shares in the Pentagon. You have shares, I said. Not clearance? I pressed the final key. Command accepted. Escort mode. The cabin lights steadied. Roy's defiance collapsed into silence. The Raptors leveled with us, one wing dipping in salute. No one wins in a sky like this, I whispered. People just survive it. Sunlight bled through the clouds, gold against the metal. The danger was over. The sky didn't belong to him. It never had. It only needed someone to keep it in order. The roar hit before the light. A sharp, metallic scream tore through the clouds, shaking the jet as if the sky itself had turned against us. Through the cabin window, twin F-22 Raptors cut across the air, their engines leaving streaks of fire that glowed like lightning veins. The pilot's voice cracked. Ma'am, they're positioning for escort. No, I said quietly. They're positioning for containment. Roy lurched up from his seat, phone already in hand. I'll call the Secretary of Transportation. They'll clear this mess in a minute. The radio interference hissed in reply, his screen flashing, no signal. I told him, the radio waves are filtered by NORAD. No one hears you now. He slammed his glass onto the table. Whiskey spilled. The crystal shattered on the floor. One of his investors whispered, Can they shoot us down? If he keeps talking instead of sitting still, it's a possibility, I said. The color drained from Roy's face. He turned toward me, voice breaking between disbelief and fear. The radio came alive again, a calm, cold tone cutting through static. Valkyrie control, confirm visual. Are you safe? Confirmed. I replied. Civilian aboard acting unauthorized. Request secure landing. Roy froze. You're talking to the Air Force? I looked at him. No. I'm talking to the system you thought you controlled. The pilot received the order seconds later. Sky Legacy 9981B. Divert immediately to Peterson Air Base. Failure to comply will result in neutralization. Roy's voice went ragged. I'm Roy Whitestone. I fund 3 military bases. I tilted my head, voice steady. So that's what made you believe you bought immunity. Outside, the Raptors adjusted formation. 3 blue dots blinked on my radar screen, each locked on our position. This is Valkyrie control. I transmitted. Asset secured. Prepare for descent. Roy stared at me, hollow-eyed. They listen to you, not because of who I am. I said, because they trust the system. The jets dropped altitude, fire streaking across their tails. Red warning lights bathed Roy's face as he slumped into his seat. His voice cracked like breaking glass. What have I done? He didn't need an answer. The sky already had one for him. The radio flared again, this time with command precision. Sky Legacy Gulfstream. You are entering a military zone. Land immediately. The pilot shouted over the alarms. We have to land! Roy barked back. I don't land until they ask permission. They don't ask. I said, they give orders. Silence fell like a curtain. Even the engines seemed to hesitate. Then came the impact, hard and fast. A violent shake. Glass shattered somewhere behind us. The pilot screamed, Touchdown! Touchdown! Tires screeched against concrete. Smoke rising from the tarmac. Everyone was thrown forward. Roy clutched his head, gasping. I stayed still, breathing through the chaos, counting heartbeats. The hatch burst open. Boots hit metal stairs in rhythm. Soldiers flooded the aisle, rifles drawn, orders shouted in clipped tones. Roy stumbled to his feet. This is my jet. Sit down, sir. The soldier's voice left no room for ego. I unbuckled my belt and stepped forward. A colonel in flight gear approached, posture sharp, eyes steady. Ma'am, command received your signal. The airspace is secured. Good work, Colonel, I said, nodding once. Roy stared, trembling. You work for them? No. I work for the people who keep order. He sank into his seat, the fight gone. An investor murmured. He just lost his whole world. I walked down the narrow aisle toward daylight. Outside, soldiers lined both sides of the stairway, forming a corridor of discipline and silence. A military SUV waited nearby. Above us, the Raptors circled, their engines fading into a low hum that sounded almost like breathing. I turned once, catching a glimpse of Roy through the cabin window. The red beacon light washed over his face, small, defeated, hollow, like a sinner framed in metal and regret. Some lessons, I thought, only come when control is stripped away. The SUV doors closed behind me. Lights from the runway reflected across the glass. In my earpiece, a calm female voice from NORAD came through. Valkyrie control, safe transfer confirmed. I closed my eyes, exhaling softly. Mission complete. The hum inside Cheyenne Mountain was different, colder, deliberate, alive with calculation. Rows of monitors cast a dim blue glow across the concrete walls, numbers flickering like pulse lines. I walked in, coat still damp from the flight, my ID badge clipped to my collar. Valkyrie level clearance. Colonel Mayvell Hawk Grayson was waiting near the central console. He looked up as I approached, expression unreadable. Welcome back, Commander. We almost lost you. Not me, sir. It was the system we almost lost. He turned toward the primary display, an endless stream of code. Red warnings bleeding across a map of the Western Hemisphere. Unidentified cyber intrusion, routed through Sky Legacy aviation servers. I stared at the screen, the realization sinking deep. Roy had used that same network to bypass radar restrictions. His pride had opened a gate wide enough for an entire cyber attack to slip through. Grayson's voice lowered. If your Valkyrie signal hadn't gone out when it did, we would have activated the interception protocol. You know what that means. We would have shot you down. I nodded slowly. Then I guess I owe them for waiting. And my uncle owes me his life. A few young officers turned as I passed, standing straighter. One whispered to another, "She's the one who sent the Valkyrie code." Grayson rested a hand on my shoulder. Not many people stay that calm under threat. Calm saves planes, sir. Panic brings them down. Somewhere down the corridor. A door clicked open. Roy sat in a white interrogation room, his face pale, eyes vacant. His hands trembled on the table. "Am I being arrested?" he asked. The agent across from him didn't flinch. "You're the owner of the server used to breach a military satellite. We just need to know, were you complicit or just careless?" Roy said nothing. His silence was the only honest thing left of him. Back in the command center, the radar sweep steadied. On the screen, a pair of F-22s continued their slow orbit above the Rockies, their signals pulsing like sentinels. I stood for a moment, watching them fade into the red of the display. "Keep the sky safe," I murmured. "That's the only job that ever really mattered." 3 weeks later, the storm had quieted, at least on the surface. My office in Washington, D.C., was filled with the hum of fluorescent lights and the faint rhythm of typing from the analysts down the hall. The world had already moved on. A courier placed a thick envelope on my desk, the kind printed on expensive paper, embossed with the Whitestone Legal Group seal. I hesitated before opening it. Inside, the handwriting was unmistakable, precise, entitled, but trembling at the edges. "You can help me get my license back. Tell them I didn't know. I'll make things right. Roy." I read it twice, then set it down. The shredder on the corner of my desk was still running from a stack of classified drafts. Its steady hum felt almost like breathing. I slid the letter into the slot. The paper caught, shredded into thin white ribbons that drifted into the tray below. Forgiveness doesn't always mean keeping in touch. I thought, some people are meant to stay as lessons, not legacies. A knock on the door broke the quiet. Colonel Grayson stepped in, hat tucked under his arm. "He's lost everything," he said. "But he should know. Without you, hundreds might have died. I met his gaze. He still doesn't understand. The sky never belonged to anyone. As he left, I turned toward the glass wall of the office. Far above the city, the Phoenix satellite crossed the night in a faint silver arc, its light glinting across my reflection. He used the sky to show off. I use it to keep people safe. That's the only difference that matters. 6 months later, Colorado Springs woke beneath a cold sunrise. The wind cut through the grass on the hillside where I stood, my coat pressed tight against the chill. In the distance, the Phoenix 2 launch complex shimmered in pale metallic light, the morning sun bending against its structure. My headset buzzed softly with the voice of the launch controller, trajectory stable, altitude holding. I closed my eyes, letting the sound settle. The air smelled like frost and jet fuel, sharp and familiar. Order restored always sounded quiet. No sirens, no panic. Just the hum of systems doing exactly what they were built to do. I raised my hand to block the glare. High above, a small silver flash carved its path through the upper sky. Some people looked at the heavens and saw a stage, a place to show off. I looked up and saw work, steady, precise, unseen by most, but felt by everyone who slept safely beneath it. A pair of F-22s cut across the horizon, sunlight catching on their wings before they banked east and vanished into the blue. I smiled, not out of pride, but peace. Beside me, a young analyst watched the monitors. Wide-eyed, I told him quietly, "Real power doesn't fly above others. It keeps them safe." He nodded, wordless, understanding. The camera of the world seemed to pull back then, beyond the hill, beyond the base, until the Earth curved gently beneath the arc of the satellite's path. A single silver thread stretched across the sky, unbroken, serene, my sky.